Are you there? Is that taken?
You
Just you taken?
You guys talking?
You know what? How you doing?
Good.
We can talk across you, Dan. I don't care. I'll scream across the bow. I didn't hear you. So I'll scream across the bow.
Do you need to sit next to each other?
No, it's probably better if we're separated. No.
What do you want?
Well, we get along well. We have a team car. Did you hear about the team car?
I heard about it.
Number 75?
I hear you get the call.
I got Mike on the stand right now. We had to make special arrangements to move all our stuff out of work. It's like, what, 9 boxes or something like that? We got a picture. I'll send it to you. Crazy. Did you like the picture? Yeah, that's great. It's good. There's us coming on court now.
That's what I like. John Field.
That's all the boxes are from it. So I had to bring up, like suburban units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you call it. Yeah, I'll get everybody.
Everybody's smiling.
There's another box over there, a couple over there.
Love it. Love it.
We could all rise for the pledge. Walter, can you lead us in the pledge, sir?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have a moment of silence for former Councilman Larry Greenspan? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. And Walter, before we do our public comment, got a few certificates of recognition that I'd like to give out. And the first one is for a very special young lady, Stella. How are you? So, the town of Milford congratulates Stella. I want to pronounce your last name. Melky. On her many accomplishments as a Scatticoke Middle School 7th grader. Stella's many short stories and poetry have won her many awards, including 3 gold keys, 3 silver keys, and 2 honorable mentions at this year's Scholastic Art and Writing Contest. Regional level, Hudson to the Housatonic. In this competition, she competed blindly against other students ranging from grades 7 through 12. Even more impressive is that her 3 gold key winning pieces were submitted to the national level, where she was recently awarded with 2 gold medals for her short stories, and is also being recognized as a best in grade, in which she will receive a $500 scholarship. Congratulations. Keep up your tireless dedication and great work. You will work hard in everything you do.
Thank you.
Okay, Mom, Dad?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Absolutely.
all right. Smile. Congratulations.
Great job.
Good job.
And next one's to Joe. Why don't Quanto Joe, no, come on, Joe. And for most of us who know Joe, had taken on the responsibility of tree warden, and he did it for the town, for nothing.
Yeah.
He came in and said, I'm here to help the town, I want to help the town, whatever I can do, and I'm ready to help. And Joe and I met a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about different ways to create a forestry program, bring the tree program into the DPW. Can't thank Joe enough for all of his effort that he's given to our town. So this just small certificate of recognition. The town of New Milford would like to thank Joe P. Quantra for his work as a town of New Milford tree warden. Since September 25th, 2017, you've worked tirelessly to ensure trees in town were properly inspected and tagged for removal. If required, keep the residents of New Milford safe. We all thank you, Joe.
We used to have a photographer here, but I don't know what. Smile, Joe. One more. Thank you.
Okay, Walter.
All right, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
205 Pumpkin Hill Road, Irene.
I'm a little late to this party. I was away for a month, so I didn't get a chance to speak about this, but it's something that has been weighing heavily on my mind, and actually on the mind of many people I know that aren't even from New Milford.
Can you say
And I
your
just
name,
feel,
please?
excuse me?
Can you say your name, please?
Oh, thank you, Doc. Irene Scribilo, that's S-K-R-Y-B-A. You're not writing.
I got it.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, you were testing me. Again, this is something that's been weighing heavily on my mind, and I was actually away, and this has actually gotten a lot of recognition beyond the town. So I feel obliged to say something. One would think that we've evolved enough that bigotry in any form would no longer be an issue in civil society. In reality, institutional racism, Jim Crow era politics, and voter disenfranchisement are still prevalent in the U.S. Anti-Semitic language and attacks are on the rise in the very places that the seeds of the Holocaust were planted. Muslim genocide has and is still occurring in China, Bosnia, India, Myanmar, and beyond. LGBTQ equality and gender tolerance has made some progress, but it's still struggling every day. This is why it's imperative that all groups fostering organized hatred should be ostracized. Ignorance is no excuse. Before you support an organization that's pandering to tribal loyalties, look back to your own family history, and you'll find someone who was a victim of the same intolerance. The number of hate groups operating across America rose to a record high, 1,020 in 2018. We as a town have to be ever vigilant in making sure that this hatred is not represented here. Sure, you can sign up for activist training, but if it turns out to be a front for hatred, say something. Go public. Don't be silent. Stand up for what's right. I was going to say there is a sign, but I guess there used to be a sign outside this building saying hate has no home here in various languages. I have to wonder if this is true. Based on the reaction of many, even some people in this room, I have to wonder. Folks knew of this activist training, even signed up and later allegedly canceled, saying they didn't know anything about the background of this organization, and yet were silent on what was happening right under our noses. There are those who even made excuses for their fellow council members and defended their inaction, saying it was a non-issue. I find this hard to accept. This is not who we are. We're in New Milford, and we are better than this. I'm just going to leave you with a quote of someone who I have a love-hate relationship with, Alan Dershowitz. He's a brilliant man, but I don't always agree with him. When you discriminate against anyone, you discriminate against everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Mike Sinello, please.
Mike Snell, 39 Taylor Terrace. As I'm sure some of you know, there's a fellow who's looking to come to our area to talk about how to get out the conservative vote and get folks registered. His name is Scott Pressler. And as I hope you all remember, a short while ago, several people suggested we get ourselves better informed about Scott. So I took them at their word and have begun to do just that. And I likewise encourage everyone else to do the same. On that note, if you're like me and want to get yourself better informed on the matter, I invite everybody to join me as I interview Scott and get questions answered right from the horse's mouth. Get your calendars out, which you can watch on my Facebook page as I stream the interview live this Wednesday. That's March 27th, 2019 at 8 p.m. It should be a roughly half-hour interview. I've also set up an event page on Facebook where if you'd like to have questions, because I'd like to have a Q&A at the end of this, if you have questions you'd like me to ask Scott, post them on the event page. If you see that somebody's already asked a question that you want to see asked, like it. That way if I get, say, 20 or 30 questions on there and I've got 5 or 6 of them that have a ton of likes, I know which questions people want to have answered. So again, that's my Facebook page. It's Michael Sinello. So it's the political Facebook page, Michael Sinello, this Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Should be a rough half hour. And like I said, I'm hoping to have a Q&A at the end. Hopefully we'll see everybody there. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Mary Jane Lundgren, please.
Mary Jane Lundgren, 89 Chuniski Road. Just touching on this Scott Pressler issue again. I know I spoke to you probably about 4 weeks ago, about the whole issue. We do have to remember that we all came around to the hate has no home here. And Scott Pressler certainly is not somebody who is going to be coming here to talk about love and kindness and all that other kind of stuff. He has a very bad track record. And excuse me, Mr. Zanello, but you can look it up. And apparently you didn't do your homework. That being said, I actually came here to talk about so what appears to be some wasteful spending. And $100,000 on an oil tank, when this money could be used for education in this town, is such a waste of money. You need to sell the Lillis building. It is an albatross. You've been in office almost a year and a half. You're almost finishing up your term, and nothing has happened. You haven't done anything. Get rid of the building. To spend it on an oil tank is just totally ridiculous. The other wasteful spending is on Pickett District Road, that you're going to redo Pickett District Road, and you're not going to put in a bike and walk pathway to eventually, hopefully, hook up with our bike trail. Eventually, that bike trail is going to come to New Milford. Whether you like it or not, the public is going to demand it. And you might as well do it now and put it in now so you don't have to rip up the road again and go back and redo it. The other wasteful spending is grant writers. You got 2 grant writers. You got Larry, I can't remember what his last name is, Wagner, out of Waterbury, and you have Tammy Reardon. Like, what are you doing? That is such a waste of money. I'm glad to see that you've rectified the town attorney situation. That was another huge waste of money to the taxpayers in New Milford. So I think you better get it together here because you're really wasting a lot of taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Greg Mullen, please.
Hi, Greg Welling, 39 Meadowwood Drive. I think it was our former mayor that actually brought in a town attorney. And I was willing to give it a chance, and I don't think it's wasted money. Additionally, I hope nobody thinks that the money we're spending on the John Pettibone Community Center is wasted money either, because I don't think it's wasted money. That's not what I came here to speak about. Okay. Number one, I will not comment on the town funding of Economic Development Corporation again. However, as a past town committee member and as a member of the public, I'd like to extend a thank you to Kathy Castaneda for her quick responses to my questions on a variety of topics, and to all other town employees who, for the most part, have been polite and helpful. I believe Mayor Bass deserves credit for setting a high standard for municipal and public interaction policy of access and transparency. Number two, I'd like to give thanks to Town Attorney Grimes for his assistance with my many questions and concerns over the year he has been here. I appreciate his input at town council meetings, especially in light of the town council often not having a mayoral assistant present. I appreciate his guidance in other town-related meetings, including his late nights spent at charter revision meetings and for making time for his evening public education forums on town government. I would like to see the town attorney position funded for another year. I do not think his value and the position has been properly measured. Number 3, the agenda item 10, the WPCA MOU. My concern here is that you do not act on this MOU without a detailed infrastructure incentive program policy in place. At the very least, have a published policy in place before any incentives are granted. Number 4, agenda item 11B, the East Street oil tank issue. I am hoping you are not going to act before you bring the contractor in front of you to justify the significant cost overruns as you said you would. From the January 28th, 2019 Town Council meetings minutes, Board of Education was asked to bring all data to the Town Council meeting and to have the contractor for the Lillis Building oil tank removal project appear at the Town Council meetings. Mr. Esposito noted the contractor should come to the Town Council to explain the exorbitant amount of money in the contract. Mr. Szymanski asked for copies of the tickets that have been paid. Dr. Tracy will contact the mayor to arrange for a meeting with the contractor. The News Times reported, "We are getting taken for a ride by our contractor," said Councilman Paul Szymanski. This doesn't make any sense. From the February 11, 2019 Town Council minutes during an update, Mr. Nahom asked about the East Street School oil project, and Mayor Bass said they are moving forward with the work, but will bring the contractor in to discuss the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. That's the end of the list, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to move on to mayor's comments. First, congratulations to the New Milford Bulls Little Scholars All-American team. In their cheer, it was Eve McDermott, 8th grade. She's on the second team. Elliot Shriver, 8th grade, second team. Rebecca Newman, 7th grade, second team. Congratulations to the ladies of cheer. In football, we have Mr. John Balsey, 7th grade, team 2. Ryder Gee, 7th grade, team 2. Tyler Kissling, 7th grade, team 2. Landon, and if I pronounce your name improperly, I apologize. Podakchuk, 7th grade, team 2. Mr. Donald Hassick, 8th grade, team 2. Congratulations to these fine little scholars, all Americans, outstanding. Next, I'd like to congratulate all the students who participated in the science fairs at Sarah Noble last week. On Tuesday, Hill and Plain and Northville students, I got to see some wonderful science projects that these young men and women did. Outstanding work. On Thursday, it was the Sarah Noble students that did some wonderful projects, some experiments right there at the science fair. I'd like to thank Susan Brawford and the PTO and the Science Enrichment for sponsoring this event. And lots of kids, lots of parents, just shows wonderful things that our students do. Next, talk a little bit about the budget process. Right now, the Board of Finance has set the date for a public hearing, which will be on 4/6 at 10 a.m. at Sarah Noble School, where you're allowed to put your input in to the Board of Finance members. I would like to thank everyone for over the past 2 weeks that have celebrated part of our diversity here in town. First, with celebrating the raising of our Irish flag for our Irish community. Second, today, we celebrated Greek Independence Day. If you walk outside, you see the Greek flag out there. And being of Greek heritage, I'm very proud of that. Next, as you'll see in our upcoming agenda, we're continuing to work on our road and our bridge program. We have our DPW and our Municipal Roads Committee here to talk about what roads we're going to do this year and how we're going to do them. And I thank the DPW, our contracted engineers, and our Municipal Roads Committee, who are volunteers, for all of their hard work, as well as our DPW staff. Next, an update on the library expansion that the public endorsed is right now speaking with Sally, who is our director. She believes we're almost completed with the alterations that the Historic Preservation Trust wanted us to do for the $1 million grant. So hopefully when we meet again in 2 weeks, I can give you some more information when it's concerning the starting of that particular project. As far as working together with our Board of Education partners concerning our roofs, we're getting some estimates on the high school, and we're working together to get some final numbers for the Sarah Noble project. Sarah Noble needs to get completed during this summer, so we're working expediently to make sure that happens. On the East Street School, the town of New Milford was awarded their $20,000 planning grant from the State Historic Preservation Office with the help of the State Trust of Historic Preservation. We prepared and issued an RFP and have recently awarded the project to Perry Associates with the assistance of preparation of the East Street School Adaptive Reuse Master Plan. The scope of the study will include extensive community outreach and input. Because this is a public building, the public has a right to give their input on what we want to do with this building. It's their property. So I thank Kathy Castaneda and Lucy Waldrick for all their work in this endeavor, and I will be bringing forward to the council and the public when we have more information. I'd also like to thank Kathy and the Plan of Conservation and Development Subcommittee for all of their work. They just had another terrific workshop the other night. Their topics included natural resources, open space, community character, and they're fortunate to have representation at that time with the Commission of the Arts, Kennewood Lake Authority, HVA, Weantenog, Theater Works, New Milford Historical Society and Museum, Conservation Commission, Economic Development Commission, Corporation for New Milford Economic Development, Farmland and Forest Preservation, Historic Properties, Inland Wetlands, Aquifer Protection, Planning, Northwest Regional Tourism District, Riverfront Revitalization, Bike and Trail Committee, Old Boardman Bridge Committee, New Milford River Trail Association, and the New Milford Historic Trust for Historic Preservation. That's an excellent cross-section of people that represent our town that are interested in the update of our Plan of Conservation and Development. I thank them for their attendance. Next, I'd also like to thank our United Way for a program that I think is very worthwhile to our citizenry. And they've come up with what's called Alice Saves. So basically what Alice is it's people that are just making it. They're just treading water. And one of the things that the United Way believes in, and I believe in as well, is giving the opportunity for people to save. So one of the things they did was they created a program called Alice Saves. You can enroll in Save Her Life, which helps you how to learn to save money. You'll be given access to free financial counseling through a trusted advisor. And if you put $20 a month away for 6 months, they're going to give you $60, doubling your money to be part of the Save Her Life and access to trusted advisor. I have this on our Facebook page. I'll be putting this tomorrow on our town website. For more information, it's ctalicesaves.org, or you can contact your local United Way. And I'd like to thank the United Way for bringing this forward and giving the opportunity. And it can be for our young children to learn how to save, adults, anybody that's given that opportunity. And I think that's a great thing. Next, I'd like to let the town council know and the public know that we have hired an economic development director. Her name is Karen Pollard. She's an MBA and certified economic and community development with over 20 years economic development experience. She will be New Milford's new economic development director starting April 1st, 2019. She has 15 years economic development manager for Rochester, New Hampshire, a town similar in size to New Milford, not a Boston suburb, and we have many parallels between our towns. She started out as the only person in the office, knows how to successfully get things started. Today, the economic development in Rochester has a staff of 4 people now. She has brought over 1,000 jobs and averaged $50 million in grand list growth in her last 5 years alone for her town. Brought in over 2,500 jobs and over $500 million in investment during her tenure. She has an extensive network in the Northeast and in the U.S., including contacts in Site Selector Guild, the International Economic Development Council, and industry contacts worldwide. Next year, she will take over as president of the Northeast Economic Development Association, which is an 11-state alliance. She came to us with ideas and excitement, specifics about what could do as a town, both quick hits and long-term for our town. We need someone with her experience as well as her enthusiasm. This is exactly who we were looking for. Someone not only with the experience, but who could restart our economic development efforts with established industry contacts and a network that would bring jobs quickly to New Milford and help combat the declining revenues from the state. I'm very excited to have her on board. I'd like to thank Councilwoman Lisa Hita and Councilman Paul Szymanski for their efforts as we were working together to bring forward this particular candidate. So I'll be excited for her to start her job on April 1st and look forward to each and every one of you meeting her. Lastly, the New Milford State of the Town is on 4/28 at Town Hall. 3/28, I'm sorry, Town Hall. Hopefully you can come. If you can't, it will be televised with a live feed. And we're excited to let you know what we've done and what we're going to do for this wonderful town we all call home. It is at 7 p.m.
In the Paul Martin room?
in the E. Paul Martin Room. Yes, ma'am. And that's it for Mayor's comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 5. Move to accept the consent agenda, items 5A, B, C, and D.
Second.
Any discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor?
Discussion.
Oh,
You give me a chance.
Okay.
Stop. We have 2 clerical adjustments on the minutes from the March 11th meeting. Tom O'Brien, I guess these are just typos, he's listed as U, but he should be listed as D, a Democrat. And this is on the bike and trail. And also Irene Scribalo, she's still here? She's listed as Irene Melzer. This happened once before, I believe, but her name is, that's how she's on the, Scribalo is how she is on the voter registration, so we just need to amend her last name.
so we have a second for the revised motion, Walter? Is that okay?
Sure.
Any discussion on the revised motion and second? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Okay. Appointments and reappointments, move to accept the following for the Commission on Aging: the appointment of Daniel A. Sullivan, Holly Mullins, and Mary Ellen Foster. All 3 are alternates. Their terms March 25th, 2019 through January 31st, 2023. And on the Film Commission, the appointment of Jeffrey Prager, also an alternate, term of the same March 25th through January 31st, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Is there a date, Mayor? It's 2022, not 2023.
I don't know. Are you saying that's an
On
error?
on aging?
It's an error.
Okay.
Wait a minute, the Film Commission is really 2023?
No,
The other ones.
the other ones are 2022.
On the Commission on the Aging, they're all 2022.
So, okay, get those typos here.
And can we make sure that's connotated in the minutes as 2022 expiration date?
Okay, everybody understand?
And we have a second from Walter?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Move to enter into executive session for an update on standard demolition care and invite the Finance Director, Greg Ossipow, Attorney Grimes, Attorney John Tower, and Attorney Randa Davila.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay.
So we're back in regular session. No motions were made, no votes were taken. I'd like to make a motion to add an item 15 to our agenda.
Second.
Okay. The item for the agenda?
I'd like to move that item up now.
You have to say what the agenda item is.
Oh, I'm sorry. The item concerns the executive session topic of standard demolition. You want to read the whole thing? There's nothing to
Yep,
say.
you have to read the whole, thing.
Oh, you want me to read it?
Yep.
We haven't voted to have an item 15 yet.
So
Don't
we have
to-
an item 15.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we have
All
item
right.
15.
Motion to add item 15 to the agenda to, to add a supplemental appropriation of $250,000 to the extra legal line as recommended to the Board of Finance from such source as the Director of Finance shall recommend. I think I put that in wrong order, but-
For standard demolition. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay.
Now we're back to item 8.
Municipal roads and public works. John?
Good evening, Mayor Bass, members of the council, Greg, Matt, and ladies and gentlemen in the public. Over the last 2 months, and since the Municipal Roads Committee, since myself and John Oakes presented to the council, we've been working towards our mid-April finish line to complete all of the engineering of the 9 roads that were on our list when we did our PowerPoint presentation and giving out copies of that. Our target was and is to save substantial construction dollars while still providing the Milford taxpayers with roads that have a long lifespan. We're at the 50% design phase right now, and as such, have a firm understanding of our engineering company's recommendations for drainage and road surface recommendations. And the team's continuous focus, municipal, Roads Committee and the DPW and other folks that are working with us on this, especially my Vice Chairman John Oakes, who's right here. I appreciate everything that John has been doing for us. Our focus has been and continues moving forward to drive down the costs per mile for each roadway in this forecast. That's prime, while still giving us a proper lifespan. All of the roads except for Pickett District and Mist Hill were estimated by the committee at a full depth reconstruction with the goal of doing substantially better than the cost per mile estimate that we presented to you back in January. Pickett District was estimated as a heavy finish coat because of the truck traffic. But based on our observation and street scan data, that was what we wanted to do. Geotechnical data did come back identifying a more aggressive approach than we had envisioned, but we're working towards a midpoint solution that still meets all of the goals. Through an aggressive relook at Mist Hill, we've come up with a combination of construction methods that are providing the results that we've been working forward with as well. Of the 9 roads, Erickson, Fordyce, Second Hill, Overlook, Mist Hill, Long Mountain 4, which is Hine Road moving north, Geiger, McNulty, and of course Pickett District. Fordyce is potentially held up due to coordination issues with Aquarium Water. I understand that they've marked the road out now for the new water main, so that might move that project up a bit, and there might be some economies of scale working with that contractor that's doing that excavation. And of course, Long Mountain 4 for a potential scenic road review. So at that point, that's where we're at. We're at the 50% review mark. We've been meeting with the mayor, executive staff, and our committee has been meeting many, many hours every week to drive these costs down, to get them in where we really want them, also to provide the town with a long-term solution to road rebuilding. There's 184 approximately miles of paved road in this town, 212 total. Some of those are scenic roads, and a fair portion of those 184 miles are in tough shape. Not all the roads are in tough shape, but a fair portion of, and as the mayor pointed out, over the next several years, there's probably $40 million worth of work that could be put into this town to bring us up to a higher level of pavement condition index, PCI, And that's what we're striving for. But right now, we're going to take these in small steps. The idea is that in this construction season and moving into this next fiscal year, and on or before July 1st of 2020, that the program that we're putting forth now will be complete, substantially complete this year as we drive those costs down and make sure that it can happen. And then as we look to the next 2 years and 3 years down the road, because of a very aggressive program, we're going to drop some of that expectation down for the number of roads and the expenses, and just kind of keep a sliding scale until we catch up to where we're into the current construction season, and then move the scale back up again on the number of roads, just to make sense as to how we get these things done, because we don't want to overburden the bonding of these roads, the interest money that is associated with that, and also the inability to get them completed in what we anticipate we could. Last year was tough with the weather. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dan Stanton, who will then introduce our 3 engineering firms, and they will give you a brief overview at our 50% point of where we are.
Good evening, Dan Stanton, Town Engineer with Public Works. So to echo what John is saying, we've retained the services of 3 engineering firms, Alfred Benesch and Company, Freeman Companies, and WMC, to design our $7.4 million worth of road work. That represents about 8.9 miles of the town roads. That's approximately 40% of the 19 miles that we had identified in poor condition when we presented to you previously. So we put out an RFP for road design. There were 4 major objectives for these firms: maintain the safety of the road, provide a service life of 20 years, have a road that's economical to construct, inspect, and maintain, compatible with the neighborhoods and the type of roads that they were. So Benesch has 3 roads that we gave them because we thought that we need to ensure that these roads are done on schedule so that we can provide the taxpayers with newly constructed roads or rehabilitated roads, as John said. So Alfred Benesch is doing Pickett District, Second Hill, and Erickson. WMC is doing Long Mountain, Fordyce, McNulty, and Geiger, and Freeman Companies is doing Overlook and Mist Hill for us. What we anticipate doing when we go out to bid in a few short weeks, about 25 days actually, is to bundle these together in a way that makes it as economical as possible for the town, so that we can complete as much road work as we can, given that budget. So what we're going to do this evening is have each of the firms describe their process and where they are. This is another touch point with the public, is to keep the town council in the loop as we're at the 50% design mark. We're meeting next week with the public as a second touch point, and I'll let these guys go. So there's Will Walter and Ryan Scrittoli from Benesch.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Scrittoli with Alfred Benesch and Company. I'm going to briefly talk about each one of my 3 roadways. I'm going to start with Second Hill Road, kind of go through what our process is up to this point. We're at 50%, as Dan had mentioned. With that 50%, what we did was we did a preliminary engineering report where we took traffic counts, found the average daily traffic demands on this road, the 85th percentile of the speed, did a geotechnical report of all 3 roadways, and then took that data and kind of assessed the situation and kind of made recommendations to the DPW for which what we felt was going to be adequate to meet the 20-year lifespan and be economical with you guys. So with Second Hill Road, we had roughly around 8,100 linear feet going from the intersection of Reservoir Road to Old Bridge Road. Curb to curb, it's about 24 to 30 feet in width. What we found was speeds were averaging around 40 miles an hour on both sides of the road. That's the 85th percentile. There was around 11 accidents on the road, 1 fatality, which was caused by a fallen tree. We performed about 14 borings on that roadway to a depth of about 5 feet. Most of those borings consisted of fill overlying silty sands. There was no discernible base or sub-base layer, which kind of drove our analysis. We also found that they were very frost susceptible, the soils underlying the asphalt. So we were recommending full depth reconstruction on that road with about 4 inches of asphalt and 18 inches of gravel sub-base. design that we came up with while speaking with DPW was lane widths of about 11 feet, no shoulder with curbing on both sides of the roadway, and 4-inch under drains on both sides. With that, we did take into account the public information that we got from the public at the last information meeting. And some of the big hot items were flooding that was happening due to the drainage, so we are actively looking at the drainage. And also one of the major hot button items was speed, and also the intersection of Reservoir Road, which we are realigning to help out with that. With Pickett District Road, again, this one is about 9,800 linear feet. Goes from the intersection of the Route 77 down to Still River Drive. Curb to curb, it's about 20 to 30 feet. As Will had mentioned, that the roadway we guys had thought was going to be just kind of like a mill and overlay topping, but when we went and did the geotechnical report, we found that there was, again, no discernible subbase underneath the actual asphalt. Asphalt ranged around 3 to 7 inches in depth. Once we did that, we came up that not only due to the high traffic loading, but also the heavy loads that were coming from the truck trafficking, we recommend full depth reconstruction with about 7 inches of asphalt and 12 inches of gravel subbase. After our last conversation with DPW, we felt that one of the big concerns with the public was that there's truck traffic moving down the entire length of the roadway. So we are looking into whether or not we can move truck traffic down Dodd Road as opposed to going the full length. That would also narrow down that cross-section. That would also allow for us some cost savings as well, and to restrict the truck traffic down in that area. Pedestrian traffic was also another one that they were highly concerned with, so we did add in 11-foot lanes with 2-foot shoulders, and also some grass shoulders on either side of the residential area to accommodate that, although we're not adding any concrete sidewalks in that portion.
Does that address the concern in public speaking about the bike trails that?
So part of our process, Mike, that we valued from the last time when we did the roads was making sure that we answer all the customers and answer that list of requests within the mission of this project. So predominantly this is a road project, and the Bike and Trail Committee we have been in touch with, and we're working with the mayor's office and our consultants for any opportunity. The work that we're doing isn't going to prohibit a future phase of that project.
Okay.
I just have a question
Yeah.
for you. I'm sorry. What was the name of the company again?
Alfred Benish and Company?
Benish?
Benish, B-E-N-E-S-C-H.
Oh, thank you.
It's
Okay.
formerly Purcell Associates, in case anybody's
Okay. On Pickett District, you were saying something about the truck traffic, and you might move some to Dodd Road. So what has Dodd Road got going for it that's going to make it better to have the trucks traveling over it?
The main concern was, how do we stop the residents from having that truck traffic going down? So one of the options was to possibly route them down Dodd Road. In terms of whether or not Dodd Road is more suitable for the truck traffic, that I guess is more on a question for DPW than it is for us. I mean, in terms of,
Well, you chose it. I'm just curious how you chose that road.
well, we had to find a spot where we could actually stop trucks from going the full length of the road. We can't put a cul-de-sac in the middle of the roadway to have them turn
To
around.
have them stop them from going further on Pickett District.
Correct, yep.
Okay, then my question is to you, then when are we going to be repairing Dodd Road?
On the capital plan, I forget which year that was. I don't have that off the top of my head. Katie, I'll get you that answer.
But
So there
is
a
that a
portion of
solution,
the-
I guess, is what I'm asking? That's
We've been
a-
discussing a number of solutions, including working with the businesses about the direction of traffic, but at this time, we're only at the 50% design, and we're pursuing, a number of paths that come back to a, amenable solution to both the public and the needs of the traveling public. So we have one more touch point with the residents, and we're looking to report our 90% design at that time.
Okay, thanks.
Mike?
Yeah, just a quick question, going back to Second Hill. There was some flooding, you said that there was concerns from the public?
Yeah, it was
Sure.
mostly concerns with the discharge points and how that affected their personal property, and also down by Reservoir Road at the intersection on Lillis Road, where it's actually unpaved. That runoff was coming down around the corner and then running the length of Second Hill and into the wetland area there. So what we're doing is paving a section just at the intersection to kind of stop that erosion from happening.
So you're taking care of that?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
I missed it. Thank you.
Walter?
Dodd Road, what is the plan for Dodd Road?
There isn't a plan, that was an option, so let me rephrase that, so I apologize for, it wasn't to direct it down there, but it is an option that we were thinking. One of which is, can we inform all the business owners, can we have them go to the north as opposed to going down through the residential area? Can we, one, do a weight restriction of some sort? There was plenty of options that we've been talking about, how to get them from going down to the residence areas, and also down to your new roundabout, which apparently they are, consuming, and the weight loads is starting to break down that.
Because that might be a real problem, tractor trailers trying to
Right.
exit from that, going onto routes.
Yeah, so I apologize, I didn't mean to allude that we were immediately going down that road, so.
The preferred method has always been, Ron just mentioned it earlier, is to route the businesses there to route their truck delivery traffic north to the Pickett District intersection with Route 7, where the Sicko and Bayonne is. That is, has been over the years. I think it's just a matter of some of the businesses have changed a little bit over the years, and maybe don't know some of the kind of local standards. That's the first goal. Well, we have to ensure we can do that properly, or at least adequately enough, so that we don't damage the other part of the road by building it to a residential standard versus an industrial standard.
And in terms of Dodd Road, we're using that as kind of a discernible point of where we can kind of make that transition. To how do we stop, at what point do we transition from truck traffic to residential? That's
Okay, while we're on truck traffic, I know I've beaten this horse a couple of times. Boardman Bridge, the railroad crossing there. River Road, probably a tertiary road, but boy, is that all beat up?
We are, I think we had mentioned this maybe a couple of meetings ago. We're working with Nat Morgan over at Housatonic Railroad on 2 crossings. You asked me to add the third, which is River Road. So we're going to ask them about that one too. But our plan for this spring was Boardman, right near the Boardman Bridge, and Still River Drive near Pumpkin Hill, were our 2 planned ones. Subject to the last meeting, like you said, you asked about the River Road one. I haven't discussed that formally with Matt yet, but that is on my list of things to get with him on.
Doug?
To help me out with a little quick answer now, you said there'd be a 7-inch asphalt, correct, on Pickett District as opposed to the 4 inches that you're going to do somewhere else. And I know that you spoke with some people, residents for Pickett District as well as Mike and Dan. Does that help the vibration of the heavy trucks? Help me out, why is it 7 inches as opposed to 4 inches and you're doing a 12-inch subbase?
So the 7 inches is done because of the fact that when we took the geotechnical report and then ran it through AASHTO's pavement design manual, 7 inches of asphalt came out to be the depth at which that we needed. Now, it doesn't really, I wouldn't say it's going to help out with tons of vibration, but what it does do is absorb the shock so that the base material doesn't deteriorate as much. So that's what we're looking at. So we're trying to give you a 20-year lifespan on that roadway, whereas right now you have 7 inches of asphalt and there's nothing underneath it. Because the base material has basically been depleted over time.
So I know the point of a lot of the residents were that when the truck goes by, there's a half a dozen houses, there's also, a daycare there, and that when an 18-wheeler goes by, some of their houses actually move and shake, and there's been some wires ripped off. So,
and with a newly constructed road, Doug, we would suspect that there'd be a better cross slope, less of a deviation because of the frost susceptible soils, and that's ultimately the intent. Whether it's a reclaim and pave or a mill and pave, which are all options that we're still making sure to explore, that we give the most cost-effective option to the town.
Any other questions for Banesh?
I just wonder, can I do really quickly on Erickson? So really quickly on Erickson, we did the exact same process that we did on the other 2 roadways. And what we came out with was, again, a full depth reconstruction. With that one though, we are looking at a potentially 4 inches of asphalt with about 16 inches of base material with no curbing, sheet flow across the whole entire way.
So we're maintaining basically the existing alignment of the road and the existing structure with some structural improvements to meet our design life.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
So Freeman Companies, Stephanie, I've got cards for you, by the way. I know that's always helpful.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Xu Yangling with Freeman Companies. My company is responsible for the design of Miss Hill Road and Miss Hill Drive and Overlook Drive. Basically, the same process that Ryan already spoke about the engineering part. I'm not gonna repeat. I just want to identify the difference. For Miss Hill Drive and Overlook Drive, the primary function for the road is actually provide access to the property. So it's actually a local road. ADT is very low. Average daily traffic is around 400. So there's less concern about truck traffic. At this point, we're about 50% design complete. During the process, we've been closely collaborating with the roadway committee and the DPW. And then we also have our public information meeting where we solicit residents' concern. Most of their concern is the ponding on the road, the pavement has deteriorated, and then there's water going into their property because of the poor drainage. So at this point, we already designed to address all their concerns. Part of the solution is we're gonna change some of the gradings on the roads, so they will have a proper draining to the catch basins. Some of the road right now it's really flat, doesn't have a cross slope to drain to the gutter. And then also we're looking at providing curbing on both sides of Overlook Drive to prevent water from going into the private properties. On the pavement composition, our geotech report identified the same issues as Ryan indicated, that there's no proper base to support the roads. So we're also recommending full depth reconstruction for Overlook Drive. And for Miss Hill Road, there's about 1,000 feet. The road is actually in decent conditions. So the town and we agreed to just mill and overlay 4 inches of those roads to be more economical as a solution.
Additionally, there's some additional pavement on this hill that we're looking to narrow for both now the cost of construction and future cost of maintenance. So whether that's plowing and other portions of the road without impacting the functionality.
Just back up. You said this is a full reconstruct or whatever you term it, but you said you're going to just pave it? What about the base and all that?
For Overlook Drive, we're gonna do full depth reconstruction.
Okay, but not Miss Hill?
Miss Hill, there's 1,000 feet that the town DPW identified that the rating is pretty good.
Well, you thought it was also good, the 1,000 feet?
We concur with that,
You
yes.
do? Okay,
So
so you don't have to worry about the base there, there's plenty of base?
We're gonna use existing base there because there's no cracking on the road right now. And
Okay.
then they indicate that the existing base is probably in good conditions.
So Overlook, you're going to do a 12-inch base or whatever?
Overlook, we will have 4-inch asphalt and then plus 6-inch process aggregate and 8-inch of subbase. So it's 4-inch plus
Okay.
14-inch, 18-inch.
And you'll add some curbing where the flooding is going into their lawns?
Curbing will be provided throughout the road for Overlook.
Okay. And Miss Hill, was there flooding also?
This year, there's some flooding at the flat area, so we're gonna correct some of the grading there.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next is from WMC Consulting Engineers, Bob Barnesh.
Good evening, Bob Barnesh, WMC Engineers. We were tasked with 4 roads, go through them, similar process in terms of obtaining traffic counts, geotechnical engineering, borings of the roadway. So let's start with Fordyce first. So Fordyce is classified as an urban collector. The road width varies there. During our public information meeting, the public concern there was limited sight lines. So we're going to propose a couple improvements there, one being the Grove Street intersection. We're going to attempt to reconfigure that intersection to allow vehicles to enter onto enter onto Fordyce from Grove Street a little easier, a little more safely. There was some sightline issues up by Fordyce Court. We do some preliminary clearing by the intersection. And then we had some drainage concerns being at the low points at the upper section of the road. or water ponds along the gutter line where the catch basins can be reconfigured. There are erosion concerns at the drainage outfalls, so we'll be rectifying those. And during our geotechnical investigation, our roads indicated that there's the subsoils are susceptible to silt. Are susceptible to frost, so they contain a high content of silt. So for that proposal, what we're going to need to do is amend the pavement and the upper. What we're going to attempt to do is reclaim a portion of the road by amending the pavement structure and adding crushed stone to it. That adds some larger aggregate in there, allows for free draining material. What we're going to do is move that reclaimed material aside and then excavate down farther, remove the siltier subsoils, and then replace the reclaimed material in addition with either a process aggregate base or a crushed stone to allow for the free draining material. It also was recommended to add under drains in that roadway. Typically we'll provide 16 inches of frost-free material with approximately 4 inches of pavement, curbing full length, and we decided to construct that road to a uniform 20-foot wide width. And then we'll also do some sightline improvements up by Prospect Hill as you look right at that intersection. That sums up Fordyce. Do you want to ask questions? Or are there any questions on that before I move on, or speak to all the roads? Okay. So Long Mountain Road is classified as a scenic road. That's the road collector. Our geotechnical engineer there identified that area as a potential area to reclaim, approximately 8 inches of material there, and we could pave over portions of that roadway. The areas that he identified that could be problematic are areas where we're going to be, if you just reclaim and pave over it, you're essentially raising the grades of the roadway. So we have to evaluate individual homes and driveways so that we're not causing driveways to be too steep, or we're not causing entrapment of water where we're raising the roadways along the shoulders. Again, on that, there's many areas where the road, water ponds, there's culverts that are obstructed, drainage outfalls that are obstructed themselves, causing flooding and ponding on the roadways. So we're going to be improving the drainage throughout that. Recommended to put under drains on that section of roadway, mainly on the higher side, the cut sides of the road, and the flatter sections we'll probably do under drains on both sides. And then with that roadway, we'll maintain the roadway widths, and we'll coordinate that with the Scenic Road Committee. Geiger and McNulty were lumped together. And the same recommendation as Long Mountain applied for these roads, to where we could reclaim a portion of the pavement and then pave on top of it. However, we've run into that same predicament with raising the grades. So we're going to be, during our design phase now, we're going to be working to balancing, kind of come to a compromise with reclamation depth and then pavement to balance off the finished road elevations there. We'll be replacing the drainage on Geiger. Much of that is corrugated metal pipe. There's unsuitable outfall locations right now, and we'll be improving that. We just video inspected the drainage along McNulty. That roadway has some much larger CMP corrugated metal pipes. We suspect some of that might be aluminized, so we requested that report to be sent to us. We'll evaluate the inside inspection of those pipes and see what we can salvage, because replacing all that drainage would be a substantial cost, and if we can get potentially another 20 years out of those pipes, we'd like to reuse those.
And that was one of the directions that all the consultants were given, was that if pipes are in good condition, we're not replacing them. If they're in fair condition, we would do a thorough analysis of that with a recommendation, and if they're in poor condition, we would replace them since we're investing on top of the drainage.
What's the length that you'll be doing on Long Mountain?
Approximately 7,900 feet
And
from,
how about,
I'm sorry, from Hine Road to front of the mountain road.
And then Geiger and McNulty?
I'm sorry, Geiger, McNulty, Geiger's approximately 3,800 feet. I'm sorry, 3,600, and McNulty's 3,800.
Okay, great.
Fordyce is 28.
Oh, yeah, that, Fordyce is smaller, yeah.
You know, funny enough, I was just up in that area where front of the mountain comes together with Long Mountain. It's not paved there, is it?
Correct.
Part of it's dirt already.
Correct. So we'll be maintaining the existing pavement limits and probably redressing the gravel roadway section.
So where
that
the
becomes
pavement
scenic.
ends is where it's going to end.
Correct.
With you guys.
Yes.
That's where the scenic road begins,
No,
We're gonna
no,
maintain the current road.
no. The
Scenic roads all along.
Scenic road
the whole thing.
is the entire length.
So
of the
you're
road.
not doing anything to where it isn't paved now?
Correct.
Okay.
We're not adding any more pavement.
Any other questions?
One quick question. The bottom of Geiger, as it comes down, there's a very tight turn there. Is there any?
We're going to try to achieve some improvement there to ensure that vehicles don't travel over the center line of the road in that area. Without major reconstruction of that area, it's very steep grades in there. So we'll provide marginal improvements, add curbing, protect the edges of the road, add drainage. So there's not much there to do
And
without.
through that segment of the road, we're
Yeah.
looking at reducing the road width, consistent road width, but providing adequate through that turn.
Right, it turns a tight turn.
Right.
Very tough, especially when it's icy. Thank you.
Any other questions?
What was your name?
Robert Barneshi.
Oh, Barneshi?
Barneshi.
Thank you. Robert.
Okay.
So in conclusion, the next steps that our engineering firms have for us is to get to about 90% design. We have meetings scheduled next week where we're going to inform these members of the public about their individual roads. And that's just another touch point that we found in our experience from both Long Mountain and Squire Hill, that answering everybody's request in a fashion and to ensure that we document and investigate each of those concerns thoroughly with a cost-effective solution is what we look to do. I want to thank the road committee and our consultants for coming out, and obviously Mike Zarba for supporting us on this project, and the town council for giving us the opportunity.
Dan, how did you reach out to the neighbors in these 3 areas?
So the mayor's office, the mayor and John Whitman, we drafted a letter, and that was sent to all the residents, including
Every resident on
Yep,
this.
and then we also, each engineering firm with the Municipal Roads Committee held a informational meeting.
Right.
So we could get public input, and that's kind of what's driven some of the design, is kind of what the,
Yeah, that's good.
correct.
So anyone who wasn't able to or missed the mail or whatever, what can they do if they'd like to
they
find
can
out what's
contact
going on?
me. That's, Dan Stanton at Public Works, or, my cell phone.
And is there another public, you mentioned something earlier about another,
So we held 8 individual public informational meetings for the roads, and we're going to replicate that next week, April 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, on the same schedule that they
April
were
2nd,
given.
3rd, and 4th, and where would that be?
Those would be at John Pettibone Community Center cafeteria.
Okay, at,
6 p.m., 7 p.m., and 8 p.m. on individual roads, Katie. So
got
we'll
it,
get you
starting
the-
at
the
6 PM,
schedule.
going through. Thank you, Dan.
Okay.
Just one quick,
Doug?
Dan, I know that you spoke with Pick a District and about traffic.
Yep.
And we're gonna do one-way traffic so people can still go. Are you anticipating that with all the other roads too, or there will be some full road closure?
Correct. There wouldn't be full road closures. We would always allow emergency services, buses through, and individually, there would be just minor delays when project needs required that time in the middle of the road.
Thank you.
And lastly, just for the council's edification, these are these 9 roads are our major projects.
but we're still doing even more roads. So we're gonna be doing crack sealing on roads. We're also gonna be doing chip sealing on our roads too. And we'll be bringing those to the council as well, those roads as well. So it's continuing on, but this is kind of the major portion for now. Thank you, Dan.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you to our roads committee.
And mill and pave.
Yep, and mill and pave as well. Thank you.
I know.
Okay.
Item 9, discussion and possible action on a memorandum of understanding with the Community Culinary School.
Carolyn.
Basically, what we're doing is contracting with the culinary school instead of the current contract that we have with another catering company who cooks our food out in New Britain and brings it to us. So we're going local, and we're very excited about it. Going to have good food, management, and service, all under one umbrella. So we're trying to do this for a couple of years, so I'm glad to have it come fruition.
Katie?
How's the cost compare?
It's going to be the same for the town.
Thank you.
That's,
Mike? Okay. Any other questions? Dr. Mullen?
Is the culinary school still going to be using St. John's for their education purposes?
yes. Our kitchen is heat and serve only, so they'll be at St. John's cooking, and then it's brought over to us for service. But it's across the parking lot.
So I'd like to move that we accept the MOU for the period of April 1st, 2019 through June 30, 2019, between the Culinary School of Northwestern Connecticut and the town to provide the nutrition services for our seniors.
We're just gonna do this for 2-3 months?
It is a pilot, so we're going to do it for
Pilot
3
program.
months.
Oh, so we're gonna just try it out?
Right,
Yep.
and if it
Second.
works, this is continuing for another 3 months. And
Any
then,
any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Please note Mike's abstention. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Before we, I'd like to ask the council, before we move to the WPCA, could we move up the Board of Education? They've been patiently waiting for us.
So motion to move item 11 up?
There's a second by Mike. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay. Katie?
So, item 11. Move to approve the replacement of the Sarah Noble Intermediate School rooftop unit in the amount of $37,020.98 through the U.S. Communities Purchasing Agreement, and to request that that amount be taken from capital reserve.
Second.
And this is per the letter that was in your packets. Do we have any discussion on the motion for the rooftop unit for Sarah Noble School? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Item 11B, move to approve no more than $100,000 from capital reserve to fund the Lillis oil tank project.
Mike?
Didn't we talk about this a couple of months ago?
So, we need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Second.
Okay. Mike?
Sorry. Didn't we talk about this, that it was originally $70,000?
Correct.
And now it's
then it-
$100,000, but I thought the Board of Ed was gonna absorb it.
So
And
that's
then
why
the
it's
vendor
coming,
would-
that's why
This
it's
is
coming out of
theirs.
their capital reserve.
Oh, okay. And the vendor was gonna come in front of us, but that didn't happen.
Not yet.
Is he ever gonna come here?
So we can ask the,
We ask again.
Dr. Tracy, we could have the vendor.
Yes, we had the vendor at a school board facilities meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was pretty responsive to our questions, but as you explained, because of the complications and the unexpected findings with this project, the school board has decided that it would be best for it to take care of any cost overrun from its own capital reserve funds, hence the request you have tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we?
Doug?
Do we have anything in writing that if it goes over the 100 grand, he's going to absorb any additional cost?
No. One issue that we're trying to resolve is the issue of prevailing wage and whether or not that applies. And so the mayor and I are working that through.
Yep.
Until we get that resolved, it will be difficult to calculate a final number.
Mayor, have you?
So we went to
When you say final number, is that final number of completion? I'm not
Yes.
following, you're asking for 100 grand.
No more than.
No more than 100.
We're asking for your approval to allow
That is their
up to
capital
100,000 from the board's capital reserve account to be applied toward this, the overrun expenses
Right.
related to the project. As you remember, when we talked about this a couple of meetings ago, ledge and damaged sewer line that was running underneath the old tank. So there will be substantial additional cost above the appropriation that you all approved initially, which was 105,000 and change. There will be substantial additional costs. Exactly what those are will depend on two things. One is our review of the additional charges that the contractor is coming forward with, and whether or not we need to pay prevailing wage, because depending on how you look at the project, whether you consider it to be renovation or new construction, it either does or does not require prevailing wage to be paid. This may also have implications for the town oil tank replacement, so we need to work together to get it resolved. Once we know that, then we'll be in a position to figure out what we think the contractor is ultimately owed. So I can't tell you that it won't be more than 100,000 that we're asking for
Well, in
today.
the verbiage, it says no more than 100, so.
That's right.
Right.
So if we need to go beyond that, we'd have to come back to you, and then you would say yea or nay.
I guess what he's trying to get to is we want the contractor to say, this is gonna be it.
Yeah.
Instead of, it's so open-ended. I mean, we're in the middle of a lawsuit with, you know, at Century Brass about the same thing, where they came in and said, oh, we're gonna need more money. So it's just frustrating.
No more than means to me, means that you're not gonna come back. So you
Okay.
could take that out and say, they're gonna come back for more. So it's,
Yeah.
the wording doesn't mean anything to me
Well, let's
because
see
you're
if we
gonna come
can
back for
clarify.
more.
We're confident that we have a rather liberal interpretation of it, meaning that worked into it would be prevailing wage, etc. We're hoping not to have 100,000. That's the cap that we imposed upon ourselves.
David, can you just introduce yourself to the...
Oh, I'm so sorry. David Lawson, Board of Education Chair.
And Steve Tracy, interim superintendent of schools. Thanks.
So, you know, listen, I think I have the same type of issue. To go into a contract without knowing whether you're gonna pay prevailing wage on a construction project is pretty,
That horse left the
it
barn.
is, you know, it was a big faux pas
But
in
I
the
know that.
construction field. You don't go into a contract with any contractor and not know whether you're paying him, you know, non-union wages, prevailing wage, or union. I'm pretty surprised. I mean,
It's a very vague wording, no more than
Sure.
now we're gonna do for 100,000 as opposed to no more than this and then the final, it's over. So you could come back to us and say you need 50. So
I
to
wanna
me, it's
draw-
open-ended, that it's, you know, open contract to where if he says, oh, you know what, I went over 100 grand. So I don't know if
Well-
there's a number that you've gotten from him, that we know what it's gonna cost? Is it gonna cost 101? Is it gonna cost 98? Is it?
Here's the, go ahead. I'm happy to speak. but
It's,
We are at somewhat of a chicken and egg circumstance now on the project. The contractor, who would be responsible for paying prevailing wage if prevailing wage is required, is understandably reluctant to commit to a number, not knowing the answer to that question. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mayor, but I think the understanding the last time we talked was that the town wanted to investigate whether or not prevailing wage would apply in this particular case.
As
And
in,
that
then it
will
would
hinge
apply
on
to
whether
all
this-
of our contracts.
Pardon me?
Then it would apply to all of our contracts.
And that hinges upon whether this project or these kinds of oil tank replacement projects are viewed as new construction or renovation. So understandably, the contractor doesn't want to give us a price that assumes not prevailing wage, only later to find out that he's responsible for that and then has no recourse. So we need to work this through together. We need to answer the prevailing wage question. Then the contractor knows what are the rules under which he's giving us his final change orders. And then we look through that and decide how much of that we feel is appropriate. So,
Dr. Tracy, is there a time of essence where we could have all these answers at the next council meeting? And
Okay, perhaps one thing, it not only went through our facilities committee, but it also did our operations committee as well as the full board. Mrs. Fallenbach, if you have a few things to add.
I'll just try and answer a few of those questions. Your question regarding the preliminary, Wendy Fallenbach, the operations chair of the Board of Education. Where we are right now is we've seen some of the expenditures that have come through the board. And when this came to facilities, it was moved to operations because the board is in agreement that regardless, these expenses have to be paid in some fashion. And the board felt comfortable that the money should come from our capital reserve. It ran over on our side. And that was pretty much unanimous. So with that being said, and trying to get these this project finished up and going through these invoices, the preliminary numbers are under 100,000, but the board had asked that perhaps we round up a little bit so we don't have to go to capital reserve 2 and 3 times over, because now that's 6 times. You have to go to the board first, you then have to go to council, and then you have to go to Board of Finance. So if you underestimate that number, it holds up the process. It could be months. And so we felt that it would be prudent to give a number that we felt pretty comfortable with between now and the Board of Finance to comb through the rest of those expenditures and get the request on the docket. And to show the town good faith that we knew it was coming from our side.
Mike?
Do we have, I mean, I know we discussed last time, do we have the itemized list of why this has gone up so much?
You do.
We do have a list of expenditures.
I would like to see itemized, this is what we bid on, this is what became more, and see that. I mean, so that what he originally bid on actually was actually what we're gonna pay, and then we ran into these problems going along the way, and that's why it's more. I don't wanna pay him extra because he bid improperly and didn't understand.
We do have a list of itemized expenditures. However, because we're going through all of those invoices, they need to be verified and re-verified. But in the interim, when we were going through this, we also need to get this project taken care of and understand that it's on us. So we're trying to work with the town together on this to get the process in motion so we can get that taken care of and paid for, and then, you know, seeing where we go from there.
But as you keep saying, it's on us, I mean,
it's on all of us.
It's all the same taxpayers.
It's on all of us.
So this $100,000 on your capital reserves might have to be made up next year's in the budget. I mean, so it is all the same. What I would like, and if he can't come to a meeting, is there a time where we can go and talk to this gentleman, or give me his number, and I can call him. That's allowed. But I mean, you know, you're surrounded by small businessmen and this board. There's a lot of us and owners. We have to do this stuff every day, and I'd like to see it and question it and that type of thing.
Could I just like to make a comment? We've been discussing this for a while.
And he was supposed to come and visit us.
And we, yes, and apparently he's not willing at the point, so, but we have talked about not to exceed contracts in the future, that this did go awry, and where the items went awry and what was found in place, as Dr. Tracy already said. So I think, you know, we don't want to beat this horse. We've already done that. And I think if this contractor is going to show up, he's going to show up. I don't know how we can compel him to do it otherwise, but they do need to get it taken care of.
Dr. Tracy, is there a time of the essence, or could we ask the contractor to come to our next meeting and get all this finalized?
I mean, it's fair.
I would not characterize it as an emergency. The hole is still there. If any of you have seen it, it's been largely filled in, but not completely. And the next step would be to finish that, connect the tank to the building so that it can be used. We'd like to get on with it. But I'm not going to tell you that it's an emergency. You know, it has to be done this week. We'd also like to let the contractor know that although we haven't agreed yet to a final amount, pending review of more detail and review of his detail with an independent individual not concerned with this project, but who has knowledge of what these things should cost, we would like the contractor to have some confidence that we're not going to stiff him, that you know, there were certain realities here in terms of the ledge and the sewer. While we debate with him exactly what it should cost, we want him to know that the board's intention is to, in good faith, pay him for the reasonable cost of the extra.
I agree with that.
Well, the intention is to pay him, but I want to know the number. I don't want to leave it. I don't walk into somebody's house and say, well, it'll be about $100. but I'll let you know. And at the end of the job, say, well, it was $150.
Well, what we
I
need
wanna
to
know
do,
the
in order for me to ask him to give me a final set of numbers,
We have
the
to-
mayor and I need to agree with the state, is this or is this not prevailing wages?
Right.
So that's the first step. Once we know the answer to that, then I can turn to the contractor and say, here's your assumption on wages.
Right.
Tell me what you believe we owe you.
Sure.
Then the third step is for me to get some independent eyes, perhaps some of you,
Right.
or a contractor who knows the business but is not involved in this project, to look at those numbers and say, yeah, this is reasonable, or
Sure.
that's out of line.
Sure.
So the first step is to deal with the wage, because that could make a big difference in what his final number is, and then what.
Because I don't want to see you come back and say, you know what, it's a 75, we need another 75, and we didn't know.
I understand.
No, the steps you just outlined are perfect.
Right.
I'm okay with that.
So we'll,
But that's part of the
I'll talk.
That's part,
What-
that,
okay,
that's.
we have a
you're-
motion on
You're
the
exactly
floor.
right. That's all part of the timeline, is
And-
to go ahead and set up this access to the capital reserve, review those invoices. The town should, you're absolutely correct, that those amounts should be brought forward. And we have
We've
been
already
given a
discussed that.
preliminary set.
That's right.
We've had the vendor come to our board. I totally agree with you, but we have to put the process also in place to access some of those funds to get the project moving, and still working in concert with the town on those issues.
Yes, it's been discussed. Okay, so we have a motion.
Walter?
Do we want to keep it on the floor?
I'm kind of sitting on the bubble here. So is it the sense of the board that, because we asked this before, that we wanted the contractor to come before us? Is it the sense of this board now that we don't need that?
But I'm okay with someone that's in the business going through those numbers. I don't have to do it. If there's someone that knows these numbers and can go through it and come to us and say, you
Paul
know what,
went
he's
through
legit.
it. Paul's been aware of all that's been going on, Paul Szymanski, Councilman
And-
Szymanski, since the beginning.
But he's
And
not
he
here.
was part of our conversations and meetings that we had. See, you all weren't here or there for those, but
We've
have been
identified
talking about
another,
this.
a contractor that has done work for the board, is not involved in this project, that we are calling upon to
Great.
pressure test his numbers.
That's
if you
right.
will. But I do need to, I owe him an answer to the prevailing wage question before I ask him to give me his final numbers.
Yeah.
That's
So-
only fair.
So Doctor, we'll touch base, you and I, tomorrow.
Okay,
No
good.
later than noon. And we'll work through that. We'll come back in 2 weeks for us for here.
Okay?
And we'll make sure we get this taken care of for you.
So you don't have to have the funding now.
We can proceed as the mayor is suggesting. I just need to let the contractor know.
Either way works.
Unfinished
Either way works. I think it's more what
You want
everybody's
to make sure
comfortable
he
with.
knows that you're going to pay him.
He knows that we're serious about paying for the
So
work.
we'll
that-
withdraw the motion of 11B and then see you
I
next
withdraw
meeting.
my second.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, he never said it.
Okay.
Okay, item 12,
Nope, we gotta go back.
11? Oh, I'm sorry,
To
that's
10.
right. We moved it forward, thanks. There's so many people talking at one time here. It's
Do
hard
you
to
wanna do
remember.
sewer or do you wanna do grant
I
writing?
think we should do sewer.
Sewer grant writing first.
Item 10 is
Okay.
sewer? That's,
Okay.
okay. Item 10 on our agenda is discussion and a possible action on a memorandum of understanding between the Water Pollution Control Authority and the town concerning connection fee assessment, application of connection fee payments, and connection assistance to commercial enterprises.
So this is a working document. So this is as we're trying to flush it out. So that doesn't mean today we are going to be.
Draft.
This is a draft. Doesn't mean today that we're gonna be finalizing this document. This means we're beginning our dialogue and our process. So basically what this is the WPCA, which is our sewer commission. Years ago, the state, for those that don't know, the state told us that we need to expand our sewer plant. We got state funding for that, and we floated town bonds, as the town is the borrowing interest. It was decided years ago that through sewer expansion and through the sewer district expansion, that the sewer could pay for itself. That's never happened since the expansion. It is paid for piping along Route 7. It's paid for different parts of connections. It's paid for pump stations. The only thing that it cannot pay for in whole every year is the actual plant itself. The town has always subsidized it. always, since the expansion. So one of the things that I've heard from some of our business community and businesses that were trying to come into town, which would, if they do come into town, help us offset this payment by adding to our grand list, was the cost of the connection fees as they continue to go up, because we had charged years ago that the sewer plant, the sewer district itself would pay for this. It's a vicious circle, and right now it doesn't work. 30% of the capacity is what the plant has right now. You need to grow it 3 more times to just get it to where it needs to be. So one of the things we thought of with this working document is, first, to finally have the realization on paper that, look, we all know that the town subsidizes the plant. Without the sewer, you have no downtown. You have no businesses on Route 70. It's an asset, not a liability. That's first. Second is knowing that, speaking with John Whitman from the sewer, he's the sewer chairman, and their legal counsel, and Randy and myself, we met and talked about where is there some opportunities that benefits both the sewer commission and the town. So one of the things that I'm kind of getting back to before is businesses, when the connection fees are too high, they're going to go somewhere else. And we've seen it happen. So one of the things that we thought of is creating an infrastructure improvement program, of which, if this council feels this is the direction that we want to go, would give us the opportunity, if someone was to bring in jobs or grand list growth, give them the opportunity to reduce the connection fee or waive the connection fee. And before we move on a little bit more, and I'll ask Attorney DeBella, I asked Kathleen over from the sewer plant, kind of what fees are we talking about? So I asked her for the last 3 years of the fees. So back in 2016, 2017, you're looking at about $187,000. And most of that was from the Litchfield Crossing connection. Then we move into 2018, 2019. We were looking at about $47,500. And then we were looking in 2019, 2020, we're looking at $48,339. So right now you're looking on the average of the last 2 years of about $40,000. The upside is we get opportunity to bring in new business that will help pay for our taxes that pay for the bond through grand list growth.
Do you have any businesses that decide not to come to town?
Absolutely. There's several businesses. There's also some businesses that have chosen not to expand because of our connection fee.
There's other businesses like mine that use an old, outdated septic because I don't feel like signing in. And you lose that revenue of usage. There's a lot of businesses like that one.
Correct. So as we know, the plant capacity is at 30%. The goal would be to put on commercial users on there, which helps us in numerous ways. One, helps the plant with its flow, which is at 30%. Two, if we can get some additional expansion from businesses that are already here, or bringing in new businesses, that's a win-win for all of us. Because right now, without doing it, we're going to continue to pay and have not many connections.
So it's really only 20 grand a year?
40 for July 2018 to right now, to date. So now we are in, right now we are in almost April. It's 48 so far.
So I have a question. Do we use the same fee for an existing business, such as Mike's, as we would for somebody who's coming to town brand new?
So right now, it's all based on bathrooms, square footage.
Right, let's
So
say
it's
all
based-
things being
yes,
equal.
correct.
So you've been in town for how many years?
That building?
Well, yeah, okay. So for 20 years, you've been a part of the community and, employing people, et cetera, paying taxes. So is that not worth some sort of incentive?
Well, I guess the first thing out asking the council, is this something the council believes that we could move forward on? So that I could bring back to the council kind of what an infrastructure investment program would look like. Would that be something, rather than wasting the council's time and the staff's time?
Well, is that the kind of thing you're calling an infrastructure?
Correct.
or-
So it would be someone
Okay.
that would come in, say they have an existing business and they want to expand.
Mhm.
So they could come in and say one of two things. One, oh, by the way, by this expansion is going to give 10 more jobs. Or I'm not creating any more new jobs, but with my expansion of my footprint of my building, then this is going to add X amount of dollars to the grand list, which then
Yeah, that's what I
helps
mean.
out the town.
So that a
Correct.
person who's here would also have a benefit, not just a new person
Right,
coming
if
in.
they provide additional jobs and grand list growth, one or the other, or both.
I couldn't agree with the mayor more. I know a business man that's been in this town for 30 years, and he decided because of the hookup cost, he wasn't going to expand. He said, I was going to get 10 more employees, I was going to build a building, I was going to get tax base, I was going to get more opportunity, and there's been several business people that say, I'm not going to pay the 15 or 20 grand. And I think we want to incentivize more business in this town, and to be restricted. Like he said, we're only getting 30% out of our plant, and it's their vehicle to make income, but prohibiting making income by costing more to do it. And so we want to bring in more business, so we can allow the businesses to defer from doing that and hooking them up, that we could get more money to the tax base. So I agree. I know at least 2 or 3 offhand that decided not to build because of the cost of the hookup.
Would this affect residential as well?
I asked Attorney DeBella because we did have some people that asked about residential, and would residential be able to fit into this model? And Attorney DeBella.
It will not. And the reason for that is because your commercial, you decided to have an incentive for the commercial establishment. If you're going to do residential, what you're going to end up doing is creating a subclass. Because some of the residential will be, the ones that you're interested in hooking up, will be in the center of town, others will not be. The residential cost of hookup is much less than a commercial.
Oh, yes.
And what you don't want to do is you don't want to create a class within the residences that could give rise to an equal protection concern.
I was really thinking more in terms of for a new home being built and hooked up costs X dollars. I've lived here for 50 years. I'd love to hook up, but it's just cost prohibitive. Would you have an incentive for me? That wouldn't necessarily be part of this MOU, but I guess my question was really to you. I didn't know you were going to answer it. But
It would be a policy issue between the WPCA and the town.
So one of the things we could look at, Katie, is you wouldn't be able to waive the fee, but maybe we could amortize the payment.
That's what I'm thinking.
In a longer term. Maybe we could do that.
because it's a lot of money. I mean, I do know people as well in their home, they don't hook up because it's a big buck to do it. But if you were to work something out, not waive it, I guess that'd be possible, but I see. But it can't be part of this. I
Not
got
this
you.
one. But you know what that does, what the mayor's talking about? It also creates a performing asset to the town when you have a long-term amortization of something. So it creates an asset there, and then it goes to amortize the bond. So it's really, if you can work this thing out, and again, this is as the mayor said, this is an outline. There's really something to be talked about here, because you're going to turn a non-performing debt into a performing asset.
And we've had a very good conversation with our WPCA commission, and John, Mr. Whitman, Chairman Whitman, continues to work with that commission too, so that we can, if this is agreeable to the council, to continue to proceed, something that I think will be very beneficial to all parties and help us all out.
So we're not doing anything today?
No, just want to get the sense from the council, does this
Please
seem like
proceed.
something that we would continue to proceed on? Kind of fine tune it, bring it back to the council,
Yes.
rather than waste the council time or the commission's time, kind of get a sense of this as we're working through the document.
Dr. Mullen even said much. He's just looking at the clock.
Sounds good, I'm in favor of it.
I think we should definitely continue to explore it. We can't have growth if people are not coming here or not expanding here. And I think it's definitely worth exploring. Should have done it a long time ago.
Dr. Muller?
I'm set.
Okay. Walter?
Well, once again, we're in a conundrum here, I would say, because if the sewer commission can't pay the bond debt, the town picks it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we don't need to vote or anything, you're just
Nope.
going to continue.
So I got the direction
Thank you.
from the council, and I'll work with Randy. And
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay.
So we're moving to item 12.
Grant.
Item 12.
Tammy.
12A would be discussion and action on a resolution to authorize Mayor Pete Bass to execute the State of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management that Tammy's going to tell us all about. It's a grant award.
Yes.
$10,000.
Thank you. Tammy Reardon, grant writer for the town of New Milford here. I was very pleased when I spoke to the chief of police regarding a grant opportunity that came forward shortly after he began with the town back in the fall. So that grant was for $10,000 and it covered multiple things, but the program that the chief of police put forward was a community policing program. So we were fortunate enough to be granted that $10,000 to initiate this 14-week community policing program. Under the chief's direction, what will happen is this program will cover the overtime and fringe cost for one officer. Hold on. I believe it's on the back side of your handout that was in your packet on my request. It will cover 4 hours of patrol officer overtime, 3 days a week. Chief is envisioning that being Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when most of our activities are happening in the downtown and park areas. Starting Memorial Day weekend for the 14 weeks until we run out of funding from the grant. They will be doing a community policing program which is outside of the normal patrol. They would not be responsible to respond to calls potentially because they're on overtime, of course, unless that required an emergency situation. They are on duty, they would respond. But these engagements would be primarily with the officers being on foot or reestablishing the bicycle patrol in the downtown area.
And there's no match to
There
this
is
grant,
no cost
correct?
to the town whatsoever, correct?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Tammy, I'm just curious, it's great. So would this be the same officer or multiple?
That, it would likely vary by officer. What we used was an average of the officer's salary rate to come up with a formula and allow us as many weeks as we could possibly get with the $10,000 worth of grant coverage.
Got it.
But with the collective bargaining unit, it does have a certain posting requirement for those
Right.
overtime hours.
Okay, great.
Any other questions for Tammy concerning this?
Move to, I didn't make a full motion of what we discussed, so I'd like to make a motion that we do authorize Mayor Bass to execute this State of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management Criminal Justice Policy Planning Division $10,000 grant for 2019 JAG local VCP program for a 14-week community policing program.
Do I have a second?
And the funds to be received into the account as determined by the Director of Finance.
Any discussion on the motion? Doug? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Item 12B, motion to, well, let's discuss it. Discussion and action regarding application by the town of New Milford in the amount not to exceed $500,000 to the Small Cities Community Development Program to establish housing rehabilitation program.
And first, Tammy, there is no match to this, correct?
Correct. There is no match requirement other than the time of mine that is administered, which is covered under my basic salary anyways. So this, if you recall, several months ago in February, I believe, we held a public hearing regarding this program. And this is the Small Cities Community Development Program. And what the mayor had asked me to do is to research and explore options to bring a housing rehabilitation program here to New Milford. That program is a program that for income eligible homeowners, it provides funding that is HUD funding, federal funds that are managed by the state of Connecticut Department of Housing and locally managed by the town. Those funds are made available to eligible homeowners to do repairs and necessary upgrades. So these are things for health and human safety. So nobody's getting a new deck and a hot tub, but roofing, insulation, new windows, things that are either going to keep them safely in their home or potentially save them money while they are in their home with some of the energy efficiency upgrades that they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford. It's a zero interest deferred loan program, which in layman's terms means it does not cost the homeowners a single penny of payment. What happens is the work is performed under very careful watch and eye of the program itself. The lien for the amount of that work is then placed on their home on file with the town clerk's office. The town of New Milford is the second to be paid, only to their first mortgage when that home is either sold or the title is transferred.
Or refinanced.
Or refinanced, yes, thank you.
And it,
Walter?
I'm sorry.
Tammy, is this being offered by the state right now?
By the state, this is a state program. It's a federal program being administered by the Department of Housing through local municipalities.
Yeah, but the state still has to authorize this, doesn't it?
This is authorized by the state. It's an open application process that I'm looking for an authorization to move forward with the application due on April 12th.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is $500,000 there.
It's federal dollars, Walter.
Okay.
Yep,
Thank
so it's
you.
there.
And Tammy, if I'm correct, you mentioned to us that it is important, they want us to use this, and the amount that we can show that we have residents who will use this will only make it easier to continue with this. Is that correct?
Yes, this is correct. What happens is when those loans are repaid, they are repaid back to the town of New Milford. They are limited to be used for similar programs or authorized programs that the Department of Housing gives us permission to use them for. So the monies that come back in a loan, when a loan is paid off, comes back to the town, cannot be used to pay police overtime, for instance.
Right.
It has to be used for this type of activity or something that we seek special permission from the Department of Housing. One thing to note is we do have the authorization request for up to $500,000. When we held the public hearing, I put out several publications of pre-applications because one of our application requirements is to show the state of Connecticut that the residents and homeowners here in town want this program, need this program. So one of the ways the town of New Milford demonstrates the need for the program is with pre-applications. We get certain number of points based on the number of applications we've received. To date, I've received 23 pre-applications from homeowners that are interested in the program that fall within the income guidelines that were set by the state. I'd like to get 5 more between now and the first week of April, so throughout the rest of this week. And if we can do that, I believe we have a good chance of bringing this program into New Milford.
And the requirements for applying can be found, that information can be found
Online.
through you, online?
Yes, the press release as well as the pre-application were put on the town website. They've been shared to several social media sites and are throughout the building in various departments.
And just as a kind of an aside as well, is this program benefits all of us. Because if that particular resident can't afford their new boiler or can't afford the new roof that's needed, that house gets in disrepair, and guess what happens? When they go to either sell, or if something happens, if God forbid the bank takes it, the property then is worth less. So that means the value of your house, when you go to refinance or sell your house, is gonna be worth less.
That's right.
So this benefits all of us. Another thing I'd like to make crystal clear to the audience that's here and to the audience that's watching on TV. Some people continue to say, why are there 2 people helping out with this grant. So you have Tammy that's right here, and Peter that's in the back there. Hi, Pete. How are you? So there have been some people saying, well, why is there 2 people? And let me be crystal clear to tell you why 2 people. Because first, Tammy goes out and gets the grant. Then you need to have somebody that's going to spend a good 24/7 managing that grant. And what I mean by that is if you have homeowner A that says, hey, I need a new roof. Okay? So, meets the guidelines income-wise. But like any other renovation job, guess what happens? You got to go get 3 bids. Then you got to decide which is the best bid. Then after it's awarded to you, then that particular person has to manage it by giving the check to the contractor. Then going out and checking and making sure that it's actually up to snuff on the job. So that's like a full-time job in itself. And that's why we have someone like Peter who's been doing these for years and has done it for the town years ago. Once this gets done and we get this money, Peter then takes the ball and then does that for our residents so that Tammy then can move on and get into the other parts of the grants. So I just want to make sure those in the audience and those at the TV understand why we do that.
Okay, so make a motion? Make a motion
There's-
to approve Peter.
Dr. Mullen.
A couple of things.
Yes, sir.
It says repairs such as correction of health and safety. I didn't see anything here, but would that also include anything for the American for Disabilities Act?
Yes, if renovations are required. So if perhaps you have a homeowner that is now facing some sort of disability in terms of their mobility, if they are now wheelchair bound and would like to stay in their home but need some home modifications to be able to do that, that absolutely would fall under this program.
Okay. I just want a clarification. Let's go through the sequence. We received this grant, or we're approved for the grant. Let me put it that way. Does the money stay with the federal government until it's dispensed, or does the money sit in one of our coffers until it's dispensed? How does that work? Because then the money comes back to us. That seems odd for a federal program.
Right. What the state does, actually, it goes from the feds to the state, and then we will request drawdowns based upon the usage of it. So in other words, on a periodic basis, whether it be once a quarter or as needed, if the applications come in and the work is moving along very quickly, it may be a monthly drawdown request to cover the bills related to the construction and renovation costs that are being administered under the program.
And then when it's all done, a person repairs their home and 5 years from now sells it, there's a lien on the home for, let's make up a number, $20,000. That $20,000 comes back to us, but
Correct.
not into the state funding.
Correct. It comes back to the town. It remains funded at the town level. It's set outside of the budgetary process. The finance department has a special account for that. In fact, we have a very small amount of funds from this program that was administered by the town in the early and mid-90s. And those funds are available for homeowners that, whether it be the health department or potentially social services that have emergency type upgrades, we can assist them with that based on the funds that were paid back from that program in 1995.
It's great, Dr. Mills. Torrington has this similar program. And Peter, how much is in there? How much is in their account, revolving
There's
account?
several million in
Torrington.
payments, not at the town level, but in the communities. Torrington is a participant in the Small Cities Program for 25 plus years in the housing rehab.
So they've been able to grow that program and to be able to help people to the tune of millions of dollars.
Ready.
Good. That's fine. Thank you.
There's a very specific resolution on the back side of my council request. If you'd like to waive the reading, as long as it's recorded in the minutes, you're welcome to do that. I don't need a verbatim reading.
Right.
So moved.
Second.
Good.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll make sure that you have it there.
Item 12C is an update on grants.
While I'm here,
Nice quick off, Dave.
Very quick update. I've got you lots of information here relating to the grant activity with some more details since I last presented to you in January. I had a question from a councilman at that time. I provided him with the information under the mayor's direction, but it's nice to share with everybody. So very, very quickly, since the end of January, we've had some more grant submissions. What you're going to see on that top sheet is very similar to what I've updated you with in previous meetings in terms of what I have submitted, what has been awarded. Right now, it's about 10% of what I've submitted. Not bad. You get 10% of what you go for. You get 0% of what you don't try for. We do have about $2.5 million worth of grant applications that are currently out there and pending. And I've got some partial award numbers which add into the equation, as well as what has been rejected or declined to date. There's some highlights on that narrative for you if you'd like to review them very quickly. I'm working, again, this application. Thank you for your authorization for this. 2 applications to the LOTSIP program. I appreciate your support. To our engineering department requesting some funds to button up those applications to help with our intersections at Elm and East Street, as well as Still River Drive and Pumpkin Hill. Connecticut Recreational Trails Program, we received a partial award of $180,500 on that. State contracts are a bit slow right now. I do expect that funding agreement to come to us in April. The Senior Center, you just approved an MOU with Carolyn, who presented before me. If this pilot program works, I'm going to be seeking some funding for that to be a sustainable program to work with a local caterer. Obviously, the culinary school, if that works out really well with them, which I think we all hope it does. Parks and Recreation, this one's really cool with Youth Agency. The town of New Milford has been approved by the Northwest Regional Workforce Investment Board to employ 10 income-eligible youth between the ages of 18 and 21 for the summer at no cost to the town. Those youth will work for 6 weeks, 20 hours per week maximum, earning minimum wage and gaining some very valuable job experience. That's very exciting. That's pretty much the first sheet. That's all language. Then you've got a beautiful, lovely spreadsheet here. Gives you a total of what I've submitted to date, and this is from when I began in February 2018. And I have a breakdown there of who the grantor, the grant maker is, what the program is, what the dollar amount was that has been requested or I anticipate requesting, which is particularly the last 2 items, being the Small Cities Grant as well as a very small Arbor Day grant that will be submitted this week. What has been funded, if it's new funding, a new grant program that I've brought into town, and then I broke it down to give you an idea of what fiscal year that grant application was submitted under. Ms.
Are
Francis.
any of these matching? Do we have a match?
There's a variety of matching throughout this.
Could you just do me a favor? Can you put an M or make a new column? You got a lot of stuff here. I don't want to make it hard, but just something to indicate to us what would be, because we are apt to sometimes forget.
Yes, no, that is very important. Thank you for that suggestion. I can add that to this list. And that also, I know that a sort of grant guidelines has been presented to you by the mayor a couple of weeks ago for you guys to review and discuss. If you have any thoughts or want to pull me in that conversation, because much of that foundation of that policy is to avoid sudden last-minute funding requests due to a grant match that was agreed upon.
Thank you. This is great.
Any questions for Dan?
No, I agree though. Katie's point is great, putting that match into line.
This is really very simple and easy to read, and I appreciate that you put it together and explained to us, all the things that are on here. I appreciate the fiscal year stuff. It's great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Next up, Greg.
Yes, I will absolutely do that.
Good evening. The publication of the new Milford budget is scheduled to go in this Friday in the Spectrum. And in that publication, the revenue budget will change to mirror what the town has in our general ledger, showing revenues by the department that is responsible for managing those revenues. We believe this is more transparent than the current format, and this complies with the charter. Expenditures will remain in the same format. Recently, the mayor and I met with Union Savings, where we have $4.7 million money market account, which was earning 1.25%. I was able to exert enough pressure to extract another 75 basis points from them, thus realizing a 2% return on investment. On the expenditure side of our year-to-date budget as of February 28th, on a straight line basis, the expenditures were expected to be at 66.7%. The town's expenditures are at 65.8%. Without encumbrances, the town expended 61.3% of the revised budget. Police and dispatchers overtime will go over budget. However, the total overall police budget is within budget. Although it has not yet shown up in your report, the Public Works winter overtime will go over budget due to the last two storms we've experienced. The mayor has been meeting with both the police chief and Public Works director to address these issues. Unemployment compensation will be under budget as previously laid off individuals have gained employment. The Board of Ed expenditures are at 57.6% of budget, not including encumbrances. On the revenue side, total revenues are at 87.6% of budget. Taxes are at 97.9% of budget. We have exceeded our stiff interest as we have collected 162.4% of budget with 4 months to go. To summarize, we have collected $89,446,218 in revenues, while expending $61,077,397 in expenditures, leaving the town with a positive cash flow of $28,368,821. Any questions?
So real quick, Doug, before you ask Greg, just the two things that we talked about was the dispatch overtime. So every week I get a run of our expenditures, and we were noticing the expenditures were going to exceed our budgeted amount. Reason being is twofold. One, we had a employee that went on disability. As soon as he went on disability, it created overtime, automatic. So one of the things we looked at is how do we mitigate that continued overtime? So it is doing two things. One, we had another dispatcher leave for another employment, so we're adding that person, and then we're going to add a part-time position. The part-time dispatch will more than pay for itself in reduced overtime. Looking at the material and winter maintenance, unfortunate, when you have an ice storm, it's actually cost you more than if you had 6 inches of snow. So we continue to have these snowstorms, ice storms. Unfortunately, they're at night and they're on the weekend. And some of them are on holidays, which drives up those exponential costs. I've asked Mike Zarba to take a look within the budget that he has now, find out where it is, and we're going to absorb that cost. But I want the council to know that we've been talking to all the department heads, looking at all these costs and coming up with a solution for that.
have a question for you.
Yep.
The chief had told us about the new program where we're rotating the shifts so that we don't have as much overtime. Will that also impact this to help?
So not the dispatcher, but for police overtime, I've already seen that
Okay.
already taking
Right.
effect.
Good.
That has been very productive already.
Thanks.
Doug?
Greg, how did you attain the 2% out of the 1.25? Was it because of the going rate, or how did you, how did they?
No, I
Did you
pretty
strong
much-
arm them to give
Yeah,
them
I
the money?
strong armed them, essentially. I said, I can take this money out and get basically double what
Right.
you're paying at
Right.
Stiff.
Okay.
So they turned that around and gave us 2%.
I like, because for my numbers, it increased about $35,000 of just making that decision, so.
Yeah.
We told them we'd like to be
No.
helpful partners,
Right.
but beneficial to both parties.
Is it
Yeah.
locked? it's
And they
not- it's not
were
locked in.
amenable to that.
How about
It's not
that?
locked in on your basis or anything like that, the money market?
No, it's a money market, so it's
So you can move it
liquid.
around.
It's liquid,
Okay.
yes.
Good job.
35 grand that you didn't have yesterday that you had
That's
today.
right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
It's okay with me.
Any other questions for Greg?
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
No. Motion to add item 14 to the agenda. The ordinances from our public hearing.
Oh.
Motion to add item 14.
Second.
Thank you. Okay.
We're getting there.
Move to amend the agenda to add item 14 and the following. Discussion.
Did you vote on the first motion?
I'm sorry, Peter. I'm
we-
sorry.
He asked to be walked out
Oh.
and caused the absence of a quorum.
Okay.
and I told him-
So, I'm sorry, what?
Did you vote on the first motion?
Yes, we did.
I didn't hear it.
No, we got to vote for adding.
I moved and
But you didn't vote.
Second.
Doug seconded.
Any discussion on adding? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay, now, motion for the following. Three motions I need to do. 3 motions for item 14. Repeal ordinance chapter 20, section 20-1A, power of traffic authority. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Any discussion? This was on the public hearing today. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay. Move to repeal ordinance chapter 23, article 1, section 23-2, membership and terms.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And move to approve the amendment to ordinance chapter 2, article 2, section 2-42, service used under the plan.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Mayor?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye, aye, aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay.
Get the back.